I am.
friends. Welcome back. I am here with my good friend, Karen McNary. Hey, Karen.
Hey, Amy, how are you?
I'm doing great and better because we've had some time to chat before the recording happened.
We
So,
have.
so I have invited you here today because you're a friend, because we do ministry work together, but also and primarily, you are a woman that I have watched up close some and from afar some on social media. Really, that you are a
Mhm.
godly woman who has used her voice in godly ways. And I've just come to admire you so much for that. So, we're digging in this little
Thank you.
interview series and trying to decide or find out from women who are doing this well, how do you do this and what kinds of lessons have you learned along the way? So my first question for you, last week my friend Cindy shared a story about how she was about to tell this woman you can't do everything, and she said you can't do, and her friend said nothing. You can't do nothing. And my friend Sherry Gregory calls
Mm-hmm.
this the need with our name on it, that every single one of us has a need in this world to speak up, speak out for hurting people specifically,
Hmm.
and we can't do all of it, but we can't do nothing either. And so, Karen, tell us about
Hmm.
the need with your name on it.
Hmm. I love that. The need with your name on it. And I've really spent some time thinking about that. And so I think I want to just kind of give some background before I answer that. I grew up in the church, um, but I necessarily wasn't always in Christ. Okay. So when I say I grew up in the church, that means I learned the traditions and I went to church, but what it means to live a Christ-like life or to be a Christ follower, that was kind of foreign to me. And so I would consider myself before 32 a cultural Christian. Okay, so that means I went to church on Sunday and I may have gone to Bible study and did some religious things. The rest of my time, I was very much living my standards according to the world. I thought I could marry the two. So when I think about the call with my need, or the need with my, let me get this right, the need with my name on it.
Yep.
I think it's really to help free Christians from cultural conformity. Okay, so freedom
Mm.
from cultural conformity. And I feel that deeply because I spent a lot of my years that way. And so over the years, I feel like this and calling has had different areas. But I feel like at this point, I'm really helping free Christians from the acceptance of cultural racism. I know
Mm.
you're probably thinking, whoa, the acceptance of cultural racism. And I know normally when we think about racism, we think about like a racist and we think about, the Klan or, maybe Dylan Roof who murdered the 8 people at Mother Emanuel years ago. We think about that. And that certainly is an extreme portion. But when I think about cultural racism, it's a system. It's a system that ranks people based on skin color from top to the bottom, was normally white at the top and black at the bottom, and then all the shades in between. And so there's some manifestations in this system that I think most of us, even as Christians, we miss. I think we would all agree. No one, we'd all, none of us would applaud George Floyd. We would all say, "Oh, that's bad," or Dylan Roof. But there's some subtleties that I've seen, and I see this in my role in human resources quite a bit that we're not aware of. So again, this need to really help us as Christians open our eyes to the systems, and then really look at how we can re-engineer these systems that are more Christ-like and that are more equitable to everybody. So.
Well, and I love the way you just said that, to be more Christ-like, because there's lots of
Mm-hmm.
conversations swirling around race right now, and some of them are positive and
Mm-hmm.
some not so much. But one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you specifically is because you are a woman who has built her life, and I didn't realize that you came to this later in life, but you build your life on God's word and the framework of Christ and who he is and what he says about our world and what's
Mm-hmm.
right in this world. So I love that you
Mm-hmm.
explained that. Um, it seems that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the needs with our name on it, yours in particular,
Mhm.
has become politicized or controversial. Are you surprised by that, Karen?
I'm not. No.
No, no
Nothing
surprise.
new under the sun, Amy.
Right.
Nothing new under the sun.
So let me ask you, let's just dive in. What are some of the things that are being thrown at you, the pushback that you're hearing about the need with your name on it, which is, say it again the way you said it, about cultural
So
racism?
the cultural acceptance of racism, like the
Mm,
cultural acceptance of racism as a
mm-hmm,
system, or you could say social justice or
mm-hmm,
biblical justice. So I think people have different names that you call it, but I mean, I really do. I am passionate about biblical justice and about equity, particularly for people of color.
mm-hmm,
And what often happens is those of us who feel this call, we are called Marxists. You may know 50 plus years ago, Dr. King was called a communist.
mm-hmm.
People say, or they take teachings or thoughts and label it as leftist or liberal. And let me just be honest with you. I don't, I look at ideas as true or false, not left or right. So I don't see left or right or liberal or conservative or as bad or good in itself. The issue to me is always, is it true? But I think
Mm,
in conservative circles, if you label something a leftist or liberal, then it's bad. So I
right.
have just found that there is a way that we quickly label people. And so I say labels are lazy. If I can label
Mm,
you, then I don't have to think about the truth of what you're saying. I don't have to examine myself and examine the systems that we're born in. So I think that's been where I've seen it the most. It's just these labels that, oh, so good, bad, and then we have them. But if it's a bad label, then we don't have to really examine the truth of what you're saying. We can just file it away and say, okay, I don't have to think about that. So,
that is helpful, because for those of us who have a need with our name on it, that there's controversy swirling around it, and it's more than just race here, especially right now, right? Lots of controversy swirling around lots of things. People like to use these labels to shut us up when God is calling us to speak up. And one of the ways I've been saying, I love that labels are
exactly.
lazy. And one of the ways I've been
Mm-hmm.
saying it is demonizing is a means of deflecting. That very often people will shut you up by a
Yes.
label or by demonizing you. And it is mostly one of the main reasons I think people do that is because they don't want to confront their own stuff and deal with their own stuff. So
Right.
this is hard, especially for, godly women who want to do this in godly ways. It doesn't feel good to have that pushback or to have that label slapped on you,
Right.
even if it's unfair. How do you deal with that?
Right.
This is not on
Right.
my paper, but I'm going to ask you, how do you deal with
Yeah.
that when people try to put a label on you that's not true or not fair?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on who it is. So if it's someone that I know or have some type of relationship, then I want to engage and I want to explain um, my point,
Mm-hmm.
just and not that I'm trying them to believe me, but to explain this is what I mean. This is not the same as Marxist, because some of the Marxist labels, the root of that is I want to take your stuff, like this redistribution of wealth. I think the
Mm,
fear with this is that, oh, like the rich and the poor, like I'm like a Robin Hood, that I want to come and rob from the rich and give to the poor, and so that's what the fear is. And so when it's people that I know, like I love to be able to have conversations, honest dialogue, just about my points about what it means to really have biblical justice and to have equity, which has nothing to, I'm looking for equal opportunity, not equal outcomes. I think that's biblical, equal opportunity, not equal outcomes. And there are systems in place historically and even to the present that make that challenging. So that's what,
mm-hmm.
when I say I really want to focus on systems. For people that I don't know, I don't engage. I just, I believe that again, I feel like the knowledge that I have really is through revelation, and revelation comes from the Lord. So I know sometimes the reason that we disagree is because the Lord has not revealed things to people. So,
Mm,
and again, I kind of have that shake the dust off your feet. You
mm-hmm.
go and you engage with the people just can't see it. That's okay. I let the Lord, he will reveal that to them, in his own time. So I don't feel like
That's
it's my
really
job to
helpful.
convince people of truth. I just
That's
speak it. So
That is freeing right there. That we don't have to convince people of
Mm-hmm.
truth. We're just called to speak it. That's freedom right there.
Right.
That's my nugget for the day. So
Mm-hmm.
any of the rest of you that are
Well, think
listening that
about it.
can
We
use it,
can't.
it's true. It's true.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
can't.
So
We
I love
can't.
that. So
The
what
Lord
just
has to do that.
to clarify, because one of my questions was where do you engage with the most pushback? But you're saying you're getting some pushback in your personal life, and with people you have
Mm-hmm.
relationships with, you have conversation, but in a space like social media, you just don't engage.
I don't at all.
Okay.
I really don't. I mean, I think I posted something, and I think you saw that post, and someone responded, and I thoughtfully had a response. But then when she wanted to respond again, I just didn't engage because I thought, okay, well, she may not understand, so I tried to explain. But then I could tell it was, I wanted to dialogue. She wanted to debate, and again, I don't debate. I'm not going
Uh-huh.
to debate someone because again, I think I believe the Lord, He is the revealer of truth, and you know,
Okay. So this
plus
is another point
that's
of
distracting.
freedom. Yes. Go ahead, say that. I'm sorry.
Mhm. Mhm.
You,
I say it's distracting because if I spend the time that it takes to really think and craft something to say via social media, that's time away from something else. And so I'm sure, like you, I mean, we don't have time. It's one thing if it's someone that I'm in a relationship with, but if I don't know you, if you just responded to a post on social media and I don't even know who you are, you know,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
I
this
don't
is
want to get
really
distracted
helpful for
from.
us, for hopefully everybody that's listening too, is that we can set
Mhm.
our own boundaries around the way that we engage,
Absolutely.
especially on social media, because these are not necessarily
Hmm.
people we know. And so my boundaries may look a little different than your boundaries, but it's important to have those boundaries. That's really, really good. Yeah, I decided
Hmm.
a while back
Hmm.
because I was having this temptation to jump into every conversation on Facebook. That
Right.
for me, I felt like the boundary that the Lord gave me is I felt like the Lord said, "You are not the police of Facebook, and that's not your job. It's not your calling, and so resist." And so
Hmm.
if it doesn't
Hmm.
on my page, I will engage with people, but not on other people's posts. That's the boundary I feel like I
Right.
have. So, for those of you that are listening, just know it's healthy to have boundaries and like think about those boundaries,
Absolutely.
pray about those boundaries, and then live by them. And it'll save you a lot of time and heartache
Hmm.
when you're speaking up. Um,
Hmm.
so, Karen, I asked you to do this interview because you have a tender heart. I've seen how you walk and how you teach others. I mean, you've done a lot of teaching in a big Bible study setting. You've written for the First Five app, and so you are a Bible teacher. And I love that you have a tender heart and you have a strong voice, and you stand firmly in what you believe. So how have you developed those skills? Because I do think it's a skill or almost like a muscle that
Hmm.
uh, we have to exercise and build over time. What are some things that you've done to develop those
Hmm.
skills?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is that, and I'll kind of expand, like I was baptized in 1974, but I began my walk with Jesus November 13th, 1998.
Mm,
And so I've always been in church, but in that gap, I literally lived culturally.
hmm
So I understand how that can happen. I understand how you can be a Christian and you can say the right things and think you're in right standing and be so totally wrong. I mean, that was
mm,
my life. So I'm always reminded that the reason that, God opened my eyes, it wasn't because of me, it was because of Him. So I'm always mindful of where I was and where I would still be without the grace of God. So that's always helpful. And then also, that I do work with Brownicity with Dr. Lucretia
hmm
Berry, and she has this great tagline that we're hard on systems and soft on people. And
Oh,
so
I
when I
love
think about a
that.
system, you're hard on systems, but soft on people. And so if you think about it, none of us choose where we're born, our ethnicity, our social economic background, our country, our parents. There's so many things, the systems that we're born in, we don't get to choose that. So all of us are here in the systems that we're born into. And so I think when you look at individuals, if they were born in a different system, they would probably be different. Just walking in just if you think about it, just by nature of your birth. So I really just think about systems, and really what is a system that, because Jesus came, I mean, he came to free people, but it was through systems.
Mm.
So I just think that, people, we are created in God's image. He loved all of us. It says God so loved the world, not God so loved the church. So God, created us and he loves us. And so if I've got to love him and love others, then I have to be loving to people. And that requires to have a tender voice. So I really try to frame it again in my own experience as a sinner saved by grace. And then also trying to walk out and love people the way that Jesus did. So, but it's hard. I mean, it's not, I mean, there's some days like, Amy, you have to pray for it, sister. Some days are better than others, but but I just
Same
believe that the
here.
Lord, if you just look at when Jesus, I mean, it was love. Everything he did was out of a place of love. It was to call the church, the covenant people, back to right relationship with him. So that's got to be my motive. So.
There's so much grace in that. And I think it applies to any need with your name on
Mm-hmm.
it, whether you're someone who's concerned about
Mm-hmm.
immigrants or people in poverty or whatever that is, women who have been abused. Then we look at systems like laws and, you know, lobbying our politicians and making sure we vote and
Right.
things. But then as we interact with people, we're full of love and grace. That is beautiful.
Right.
That's another big nugget for
Right.
today. So let's just
Right.
wrap up and tell us your one best piece of advice for godly women who want to speak up in godly ways.
Mm-hmm. I would say check your motives. Is your motive to please man or to please God? And that's it. If our motives are to please man, then we need to really pause and get that right. But if our motives are to truly please God, then we have to follow Jesus. Jesus didn't shy away from speaking hard things that offended people. He didn't, but his desire was always from a place of love to bring his creation back in the right relationship. So again, I think it goes back to motive. Is it man or is it God? And if it's not of God, at the time to speak. It's the time to get that right first and then speak out, because we want to speak out of the overflow of God's love for us. That's what his love flows kind of to us through to other people. So it needs to be from the outflow of love, because that's that. I mean, the cross was the ultimate act of love, right? Was it the sword? It was the cross. And so um, again, that's hard, but it has to be right motive to please God.
That's fantastic. And when I think about that and the way you said that, Karen, it's the only way that we will speak up and keep speaking up over time. Because if we do it to please man
Mm-hmm.
or for image or any other reason, any other bad motive, it's just not worth it. We'll get
Mm-hmm.
tired of it and we'll give up on the need with our name on it. So
Right.
thank you so much for
Right.
teaching us some things that will help us persevere in doing good.
Well, thank you for having me. But again, this is a process. So just know that, particularly in this time period, I mean, this is a process for me. I'm not there. This is a constant daily process that I want to have the right heart attitude uh, to really help serve God's people. So,
That's really good. Well, thank you.